I did a podcast with Jay about his Bigfoot sighting in Challis, Idaho. Here are some photos of my expedition to Challis after he reported his Bigfoot sighting to us.
It was a spring bear hunt last year. I had back surgery in November of 2015, and we've been hunting this area for years and years. Matter of fact, my hunting partner has been hunting up there since the early 1980s. So it's an area we know very, very well. The morning that this happened, we have 3 bait sites set up, 3 different tree stands. And because of my back surgery, my 2 buddies were going to get me up into my tree stand and then help me up in there because of my back surgery. And then we were going to meet up at 1 o'clock. When we got to the area, we park our 4-wheelers and we walk in about 3/4 of a mile to a mile to each tree stand. When we got there, one of my hunting partners and I, both of us are former United States Marines. And we noticed that the sounds of the forest they just weren't there. There was no birds, there was no crickets, there was no squirrels moving around. And both of us recognized it. I even made a comment. I said, it feels like we're walking into an ambush. And one of my buddies says, well, maybe it's just Eclipse. There's a bear that we've been seeing on our trail cams for 5 years. We named him Eclipse because he's so big that he stands and eclipses the entire bait barrel and tree in front of it. It looks like you may have a picture of him. He's a big boy. And so you, as an experienced hunter, and anyone who's an experienced hunter, you pay attention to your surroundings. It's called situational awareness. And we just noticed it just felt different. We got to my tree stand, and as I started to climb up in it, I was about 8 feet up off the ground, and the ladder shifted, and I almost went off. I was hanging on, my feet had gone off, and that's when we noticed something had messed with our tree stand. And it's happened before. Bears have gone in there and messed with stuff. So we just re-secured our straps. I climbed up in the stand and was facing towards the barrel. My 2 buddies left, and our plan was to meet up for lunch at about 1 o'clock. Now, part of the things that I didn't put in that report, I had been suffering from sleep apnea where I didn't get a lot of sleep. And so I had dozed off while I was in the stand. And I woke up to this yoop. It was 3 in a row. It was a consistent yoop, yoop, yoop. And I heard it, and I heard it again, and I finally realized, oh man, I've been sleeping. So I thought it was one of my buddies. I looked first down towards the barrel. I looked below the tree stand. I looked to the left down the hill, and then when I shifted my body and looked to the right, that's when I caught the color. It was a deep red, like a cinnamon red color, but it had longer hair than a bear. It was squatting down like a human would squat down. And just as I turned and it was about 60 yards away, it was, like I said, it was squatted down in a ball. And when I turned and looked at it, it turned still in the squatting position. So I pulled my rifle to look through the scope to see what it was. And it turned still in the squatting position. It turned, it stood up, it grabbed a tree branch with its arm, and it walked off on 2 legs. So I only saw it for a few seconds. But I'll tell you, in that few seconds, I was paralyzed with, what was that? It did not fit any reference of any animal that I'd ever seen in 40 years of being in the woods. But this instant fear came over me. And the only time I have ever felt something like that before was when I was in high school and I was out hunting, and I came face to face with a cougar, literally within 30 feet of a cougar who was staring at me. And it was the feeling that I'm assuming prey animals get when a predator animal is locked on them. It was just an overwhelming sensation of paralysis. I couldn't shoot him. I was frozen, having like I don't know how to describe it, an outer body experience. And I look at myself as a pretty tough guy. I've taken down some pretty big animals, but I could not pull the trigger. because I could not identify what I had just seen because it looked human to me. It moved like a human moves. It did not appear to me that it was like, didn't appear like an 8-foot giant.
Right.
The body was more like a human teenager. You know how they're long and lanky, but you can still see muscle definition.
Right.
It was long and lanky. I would love to go back up there and have someone get in that exact same position. I could tell you then more accurately how tall it was, but it was probably 6 or 7 feet tall. It was a deep red, like more red than any bear I'd ever seen. When this happened, I replayed that in my mind for months before I decided to send in any report. I couldn't sleep because to this day, I still don't know what I saw. I'm hesitant to call it a Bigfoot because I'm one of those guys who believes if they were out there, we'd find a body, but I can only tell you what it was not. In my mind, I thought, okay, maybe it's a grizzly bear, but a grizzly bear could not turn in a squatting position, stand up, grab a branch with a hand, not a paw. I watched his hand close on this branch to get his balance and walk off on 2 legs. It was darker, reddish brown, like a grizzly bear would be, but it didn't. I've seen grizzly bears before. I've killed a bunch of black bears. I know exactly what their body and their shoulders and their neck and everything looks like. This did not have protruding ears. It had a very distinct shoulder set with a rotator cuff type shoulder with broad back. I could see the muscles in his glutes flexing. I could see the thigh muscles flexing. I mean, I could see the feet. They were not pads. Wasn't a bear. I know for a fact it was not a bear. It wasn't an elk. I can't tell you what it was. I can only tell you what it was not. But I couldn't get a good night's sleep for months and months and months. And I didn't tell anybody. To this day, my hunting partners don't know. My son was with me. He doesn't know. Because all of us are the type that would say, the baloney, this is BS. You didn't see that. That's another reason why I don't want to get my name out there. I don't want people calling me. It's one of those situations where I know what I saw, looked, walked, moved with fluid movement, not herky-jerky movement like a bear. I've seen bears stand up. I've seen them when I've been in ground blinds stand up and try to get a good smell and move on their back legs, and they move with a herky-jerky waddling. This thing moved with efficiency, and it moved with fluid movement on 2 legs. The moment I turned to face it, it could see me turning, and it just pivoted, stood up, walked out. But that's not the whole part of the story. I was there frozen in a state of panic. And I looked at my watch. I thought, man, 2 hours. I got to sit here for 2 hours before my buck. Because I heard there was no way in hell I was getting down out of that tree stand with whatever that thing was around. It was parallel to the bait barrel, which was the bait barrel was set at 60 yards. This thing was no more than 65 yards away. Within 20 minutes, I started hearing this clicking sound directly behind me. And at first, I thought it was like an elk calf or a deer fawn clicking to find its mom. It was the same type of pattern. It was a click, click, click. And then about the 3rd time I heard it, I realized it sounded like 2 rocks clicking together. And every few minutes, this thing moved around me off just into the tree line within 100 yards where I couldn't see anything moving. But I would hear it click, 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 just tapping rocks together. And this thing moved around me for about 30 minutes.
That's amazing.
And I'll tell you what, I was as nervous as a cat having kittens, man. Did not appear to have a visible neck. The head was sitting on the shoulders. The head was like a conical shaped head. From the side, because I saw it better from the side, and then I stood up and saw the back. With the back, the head flowed right into the shoulders and the long hair. wide shoulders, big
And you
shoulder.
and you got to look at the face at all.
No, I didn't see the face. I just saw it from the side when it made its turn. When I first looked down there and I got the color pattern, the color stood and jumped out at me. When I first looked at it, it may have been facing me, but my eyes didn't register right away what the hell I was looking at. So when I pulled my scope up, by the time I pulled my scope up, I could see. Let's see, it would be its right shoulder and back. But its face must have been dark because it was squatting down facing me. And when I first looked that way, I couldn't make out facial features. So I'm assuming the face had to have been dark, but I couldn't tell you because I didn't see the face clearly.
So you were able to get a scope on it and get a better look at it through your scope?
Yeah. And that's when I saw the back of it, the shoulders and the legs and the muscle flex. I mean, you could see the gluteus muscles and the thigh muscles as it was stepping off.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're up there hunting bears. You know exactly the profile, the structure of a bear, and you know instantly and throughout the entire encounter, you were not looking at a bear. You were looking at something that was more human than anything.
Yeah, it was more human than anything. If anyone asked me, if someone asked me what and no one has, you're the only person that I've talked to about this. If someone asks me what I think a Sasquatch is, it has to be a race of human. It's not an ape. It might have hair like an ape,
right?
But it's got to be a race of human.
Man, that just gives me chills. You know, my grandfather, 3 Bigfoot walk up within about 30 yards of him and observe him. And some of the descriptions that you've given me are the same types that he gave me, and the paralysis, just the shock that he was in. And my grandfather had his sighting in the 30s. There wasn't the phrase Bigfoot back then. He didn't know what he had saw, but he thought it may have been a primitive form of giant hairy people. They observed him like people, acted like people. And the smallest one, which was as tall as he was about 6'3". He was trapped fishing. His only way to get away from them was jump in the lake and start swimming. They were blocking his escape. And so once he got his fear under control, he started fishing again. He's like, maybe I just need to keep doing what I was doing. They're just standing there watching me. And then he was like, well, maybe they're here for my fish, because he's caught a few. He chucked one back, and the smallest of the 3 come up, grabbed the fish, took it back to the rest. So he started throwing the rest of his fish back. After they retrieved a few, they left. And then that's when he went and found his camping buddies, and they left the area. This was in Washington. They left the area never to return. They did an annual backpacking trip to this area near Mount St. Helens every year, and they changed the location after that. And it wasn't until the Patterson-Gimlin footage come out like 37 years later, he could tell people, you know, that's what I saw 3 of them walk up on me, and he described them as a primitive form of hairy humanoids.
Started up to my right, up the hill, and then went behind me, and then around until it was in front of me more than 100 yards, because it was back in the tree line. But there's no animal that I'm aware of in the woods that can bang things together. Maybe a monkey, but 4th set of clicks, I'm like, no one's going to believe this. I got to record it.
Yeah, a lot of people are claiming that when someone has a Bigfoot sighting, everybody has a phone. Why didn't they take a photo or take a video of the phone? And usually the sightings are really fast, and you're in shock. And by the time you start getting your wits about you to do something about it, it's over. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. I've spent about the last 10 years seriously hunting for Bigfoot. The icing on the cake, you know, there's a lot of disappointment, 99.99% disappointment trying to find Bigfoot, but the icing on the cake is the other wildlife that I get to see along the way. And I've seen some pretty rare animals. I got an 11-second sighting of a wolverine. That's a really rare sighting in the lower 48. I picked up a camera, turned it on, tried getting the camera on it. I couldn't. It got on the other side of the car because it crossed the the dirt road in front of us like it owned the place. I threw the camera to Jenny, it was on, and she tried getting it and it got away. And then, we're like, we're never going to flip and get a Bigfoot if, we got a full 11-second sighting of a wolverine and we can't even get a picture or a video of it. I mean, unless you already got that camera going, it's really hard.
I went and bought GoPros so that I can wear them no matter where I'm going.
Right. And I do that too. I have a chest GoPro.
Going up there as many times as I did. And then my hunting partner, who's been hunting up there since 1983, I sat down with him after we were on another hunt. We were actually snow goose hunting in Arkansas, and we were sitting in the lodge, he and I asked him, "You ever seen anything weird up there on that mountain?" He said, "What do you mean weird?" I said, "I don't know, something you couldn't identify." He said, "Like Bigfoot?" I said, "I'm not saying Bigfoot, but you ever had anything come into your field of view that you couldn't identify?" And all he said was he never had anything come into field of view. He said that on one particular hunt, he was by himself, and it was in the exact same tree stand that I was in. He said he had a feeling that someone was watching him. And it's just like the hair stood up on the back of his neck. He said it was like this intense, he couldn't figure out where it was. He was looking all around. No bears were coming in after he had seen multiple bears on the trail cams. He knew they were coming into the bait. And he said that he just had this intense feeling that somebody was watching him. And he said after about 20 minutes, middle of the day, he just climbed down and hiked back to his four-wheeler. And you saw where we were at. There's no way you're going to get to that place in a truck.
Right.
You got to go up to get to the Jeep trail, and then you better take four-wheelers the rest of the way. And then you still got to hike about a mile in. It is, it's pretty remote. I mean, you're 27 miles from a good road. That's just that road that was all bumpy that you were on. And then you're 30 plus miles from a paved road.
Yeah, that was a rough road too, man. That was rough getting back where I made it to.
Yeah, not very many people hunt back there. It's just it's too tough to get to. We've seen, of all the years we went up there and putting our trail cams up there, one time we've seen another hunter, and it was a guy with some dogs came on our trail cams.
You guys have gotten bear on your game cameras back in there, and I know there's Bigfoot back there because you're not the only one that has saw them back in there on the edge of the river, no return wilderness. There are dozens and dozens of sighting reports that come out of that area. I get a sighting report almost once a year in that general area. So
I think the only way that someone is going to prove the existence of whatever this thing is, someone's going to have to spend a lot of time up there, going in and checking daily. But I'll tell you, when this happened to me, like I said, I couldn't sleep for weeks, months. And after about, I think it was in September. It was in September, I think. That it happened in early June 6th, I think is when it happened. Finally in September, after replaying this thing 1,000 times in my head and trying to identify what I saw, so I didn't misidentify anything, I finally sent into a report to another organization, and it took them, I think, 6 months before they even emailed me back. But the funny thing was I sent in that report to you, and it was, I don't know, within days or within a couple of weeks you had gone up there. After I sent in the report, now I'm starting to pay attention to what other hunters are saying, and someone else on a different reporting, I don't know what you guys call this organization, someone else had a sighting about 7 miles from where my sighting was that you probably went right by, and it's the same thing. It was a group of hunters, and one of them had gone up high on a ridge to glass and saw what he thought was one of his hunting party on the other ridge. And that report was about 7 miles from my report, and it was, I think, the year before.
Right, I know the sighting you're talking about. I've spoke to that guy on Facebook several times. He he saw your sighting report investigation, and he got a hold of me, and he's like, I had a sighting near there, and told me a little bit about it, and you know, people are seeing them there, and right there on the edge of the river in no return wilderness. People can't build in there. There's not very many roads at all. If a creature wants to stay unmolested by mankind, that's a great place for it to be. And obviously, with the game in the area, there's plenty to eat.
Now that I'm paying more attention to things, again, I don't want to go out and say it was a Bigfoot, but I cannot identify what it was. But thinking about this, that time of year when the does are having their babies and the elk are calving, it's easy for a predator to catch an elk calf that can't hardly move. You know, they stay hidden in the grass and they stay hidden back in the forest. If they are following the elk herds, they would probably have their greatest luck in capturing a calf at the time of the year that I was up there when the calves were brand new.
Right.
You know, they're coming out of the tree lines, they're coming out of the snow, they're coming down to where the good grass is. And you were close to where I was at. You were still a few miles from where I was actually at, which was a pretty thick wooded area. But, you know, there's a lot of berries and stuff up there, a lot of nutritional stuff for elk and deer and the bear. If they are following the elk, it's got to be during the calving season.
A Bigfoot sighting that I had an opportunity to get into the day after it happened, and then a couple of days later with the witness. The witness got a hold of a guy that knows me and also knows Todd Strong, and Todd Strong's the BFRO investigator for the Utah area. And he got a hold of me the day after the guy had his sighting. I didn't know the exact spot, and he's like, the guy can't take us back up there for a couple of more days because of his schedule, but he's going to take us to the spot. You know, I shot right up there and started looking around, although I didn't know the exact spot. I just knew the general area. And then when we were able to hook up with that guy, Todd Strong also come along, and we did our investigation up there. But what happened is he was hiking with his girlfriend, and he heard a screaming doe, a doe in distress.
Mm-hmm.
And him and his girlfriend come upon the doe about 10 minutes later, and it was still screaming. Well, it's laying there dying, and it's trying to give birth to a stillborn. The guy's name's Curtis. You guys can go look up Curtis's Bigfoot sighting on my YouTube. We've actually interviewed him on there at the location. Well, he's trying to pull the fawn out, and it's sloughing off. It's been dead for quite a while, and finally he gave up trying to pull it out, and he went up to the head of the doe and started petting her and trying to calm her and just, you know, give her some support, some emotional support. And she finally expired while he's petting her. And after she expires, he notices up on the hill about 70 yards away, Bigfoot standing there staring at him. And then that's when he, you know, looked up at it, and both of him and his girlfriend noticed it at that time too. And they started observing it. Once it noticed them seeing it, it made its way up over the ridge. Now, if this creature wasn't interested in an easy meal, why would it come in? Was it going to come in and do the same thing Curtis did, try to save the doe's life? No, I don't think so. I think that Bigfoot was there for an easy meal. We do the reenactment and stuff there with Curtis trying to stand where the Bigfoot was to get a size comparison and stuff. And me and a couple of my team members, we get up there and we start finding the footprints of this thing. 17 inches long by about 7 inches wide, and then at the widest point. And then there's a few places where it's steep, where you can see it put its hand down on the ground. So now all of a sudden we have physical evidence back up, and we're finding all these footprints where he says he saw it, where it went up over the hill. So and then of course the doe's right down there dead where he said it was. with the, you know, the stillborn and everything. So, you know, he had a lot of physical evidence that we found to back up his claim, and that was only 3 days after it happened. So when you're saying that they're probably following the elk herds during the calving season for an easy meal, I mean, they don't even have to take the life of the animal. If the placenta isn't eaten by the mother and just left behind, that's an easy meal. And then of course there's going to be a percentage of them that are going to give birth to stillborns, you know, very easy. And then the calves are an easy meal. So yeah, I really do believe that a Bigfoot will take meat if it can. And I really have to agree with you. It's probably following the elk herds during that same time of year for that reason.
After this happened to me, and I started paying a lot more attention and reading reports and not really directly asking people, but talking to friends that are hunters and just asking if they had any weird things happen that they couldn't explain. Most of the people that are in my circles, they don't even want to, if they have seen anything, they're not telling me. You know, they don't believe. I didn't believe in it. I will tell you, I just don't have an answer for what it was.
Right.
Because it moved like a human. You know, and someone was asking on one of the reports, they were asking someone else, but I was thinking about the answer. If someone asked me what I thought it was, or do you think it was someone in a monkey suit, you know, it crossed my mind, could someone have hoaxed me? Except I'm 27 miles from a good road. I'm out in the woods with a bunch of other rednecks with rifles during hunting season. It would not be smart to try to hoax somebody who's armed in a tree stand, who's ready to kill something. So, you know, like I said, it was not a bear. It was not an elk. And I'll ask you the question, you know, what do you think 27 miles from a road with a bunch of hunters with rifles?
Well, I'm not embarrassed to say it. I think you had a Bigfoot sighting. You don't want to put that label on it because you just don't want to accept that's what it is. And also your entire life, you know, you haven't been able to go to a zoo or whatever and someone say that's a Bigfoot. You don't know what you saw, but it wasn't any of the animals in the area. It was human-like, covered in hair, what, a dark cinnamon type, brown type hair.
Yep. And the feeling that overwhelming feeling of fear, frozen panic. I mean, I've looked at the only other time that ever happened to me was when I was standing eyeball to eyeball with a cougar who wanted to eat me. And had my friend Kevin not come running up, that cougar probably would have pounced on me. But it was an internal physiological thing in my body where the hair was standing on the back of my neck.
Right.
And it was an overwhelming feeling. It was unlike anything that I'd ever felt on any previous hunting trip. It did not fit any reference I had of any animal that I've ever seen in the wild. I've been blessed to see a lot of animals in the woods. I've seen in that same area, I've seen wolves. I've never seen a wolverine, but I've seen wolves. And, you know, I've had wolves walk right past my tree stand not probably within 100 yards where I could see them through the trees. I knew they were there, but not close enough to see their whole body at the same time. I've seen a ton of elk and deer and bear. I've seen cougar up there on our trail cams, but this did not fit any reference that I had of any animal other than a human. It's got to be a subspecies of human. It has to be.
I would like to go back to the beginning of your sighting. You heard 3 whoops, and then it come walking out to where you could see it after you heard the 3 whoops.
No, I had dozed off. I'd fallen asleep,
Mm-hmm.
and I woke up to this yoop, like a Y, yoop, not like a whoop, but like I said, yoop, and it was in a pattern of 3, yoop, 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 and then there was a pause, like it was waiting for a response. By the time when I caught a glimpse of it, it wasn't moving, it was squatted down. Just like when I'm glassing an area, I don't want my body to be seen. I'm squatting down, I'm using the terrain, trees or rocks or bushes, and I'm glassing the area.
Master of camouflage.
I'm trying to pattern the whatever I'm hunting, the elk or the deer, to get a good idea where they're at, what they're doing, the patterning the bear. There's a reason we go up and check those trail cams every day. You know, we know what time the bears are coming in and who's coming in and who's controlling the bait site. So a good hunter will pattern his prey. And in my mind, this thing was trying to communicate with something, either another, whatever it is, or me trying to see if I was going to respond to it. I had to guess this thing was young, like I said, teenager. That's what the body looked like. My son at the time was 16, 17, and he's tall. He's 6'3". And he has that lanky build. If you were to get into a gym and really bulk up, he could be an easy 240, 250 pounds. He's probably 180, 190 pounds. But that long, lanky, that's what appeared when it stood up and moved away. But it was squatted down in a small, it was probably 3 or 4 feet tall, but squatted down, you know, knees bent, rump on the ground.
Was that side profile to you as when it was squatted down?
Yeah, it turned in the squatting position. So it was squatted down and it turned. That's when I saw the shoulder, the side of it. When I first saw that it was there with the color, because the color stood out. The color stood out like I said, like a cinnamon color bear.
Right.
So that's what I saw first. And it was still squatting down. So the face must have been black because I did not see a distinguished, I know it was not a light colored face. Because when I pulled my rifle up, I could see it turned to the left, so I could see its right shoulder, the right side of its head, but I could not make it out an ear, and I could see across the back, the hips. I mean, it stood straight up, grabbed the branch for balance, because it was on the side of a hill. It was right next to a tree. And when it turned, it reached up and grabbed the tree limb with a hand,
right,
and then pulled itself up the rest of the way and walked up the hill.
That's amazing.
A bear would have been easier for a bear to walk on 4 legs to get up the hill. That's how steep the side of it was. This thing walked on 2 legs and walked off right back into the trees. Within just a second or two, it had just, because the tree cover was pretty thick in that area. So within a few seconds, it was back into the trees, and I couldn't tell you 3 steps, and it was out of view. My rifle was on, so I have a crossbar on my tree stand.
Right.
My rifle was sitting on the crossbar, facing towards the bait barrel, and I had been leaning back when this pattern. I heard it 3 times before I actually moved. I heard that yoop, 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 pause, and it was probably a 15-second pause, yoop, yoop, yoop. And the 3rd time is when I leaned forward and I started to look, where was this coming from? I looked at the bait barrel, looked down by the tree, and then when I looked to my right and I saw the color, the moment I saw the color, it started to, when I caught a glimpse of it, it immediately moved. The moment I looked towards it, because my whole body had to shift, it was up and to the right from my tree stand. So I had to shift my whole body to look in that direction. And it, like I said, I saw the color, and then it immediately started to pivot. I drew my rifle up on it. By the time I got my rifle up, I could see the shoulders, the back, the glutes, the thighs. This thing had when it grabbed the tree, it reached up with its right hand, grabbed the tree, and you could see forearms like Popeye. I mean, it was big. So even though it wasn't, and again, unless I put someone in that position where I could show the exact tree and where he grabbed, I can't give you a definitive size, but it didn't appear to be like a huge giant, but 6 or 7 feet tall, probably within a man's size. Yep, I could see the back of his hand. It was a freaking hand. It was not a claw. It was not a paw. It was a hand that reached up and grabbed that tree limb, pulled itself up, got balance, let go of it, and walked away. because I don't know what it is, and I couldn't get a good night's sleep for probably several months. I had to finally tell somebody
Uh-huh.
because none of my friends would have believed me. None of my friends would have talked about it. The reason I'm wearing sunglasses and this hat, I mean, my friends are going to recognize me when they watch this, but I'm probably going to get some ridicule. But at least John Q. Public's not going to know who I am, because I don't want to answer a bunch of questions. I don't want people showing up at my door, hey, take me to where this is. I don't want any of that crap. I mean, I don't mind. If you want to go up there again, I'll take you up there, and we can sit up there for days on end. And I've thought about this for the last year and a half. It's been now 18 months since the sighting that I had. How many times I've been up there, and how many times my son and my hunting partners have sat in those tree stands and not seen anything. I was trying to determine what this thing would be. It has number one, in my mind, it has to be human, and it's got to be traveling through the area, because my hunting partner hunts fall and spring in that area. He hunts elk in that area during the elk season. He's taken multiple bulls. He helps other people, he gets them into the area and shows them where the good bulls are. And nobody within my hunting group, which are dozens of people, I can't even imagine that they would have seen anything, because we probably would have talked about it at some point. Because I asked individually, I've never asked when I'm in the group because I don't want to be ridiculed, but if we're out and we're having, dinner or something, I might ask him, you ever see anything weird? And the only time was one of them, the one that's hunted there the most, said that one time he felt the intensity of someone watching him and just got out of there. He didn't know what it was. He couldn't explain it. And when you're a hunter and you know what it takes to put meat in the freezer, you know the feeling that you get as a predator when you're putting an elk in your sights, or a deer in your sights, or a bear in your sights. That feeling that you are the most dominant thing in the woods. But when you have an experience like this, you realize you're not the most dominant thing in the woods, and it becomes scary. You're frozen with fear. So it's a double-edged sword. People might say, God, I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see it. When you have the experience that I had, you won't sleep. You'll be in panic mode. You'll feel weak. You know that you are not the top of the food chain when you're out there. And to be frank with you, I have not been out there since. I have been invited to go out multiple times, and I'm just like, I can't do it right now. At some point I will, but I'm not going out there sitting by myself again.
Just an amazing Bigfoot sighting and a Bigfoot sighting hotspot. I hope you enjoyed Jay's Challis River of No Return Bigfoot sighting. We'll keep on bringing you more investigations into this area, other areas where there's Bigfoot sightings. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on squatching.